Welcome to the Humble Hoof podcast. My name is Alicia Harlov. This is a podcast for both horse owners and hoof care professionals, offering discussions into various philosophies on the health of the hoof and soundness of your horse. Please check us out on Facebook or at thehumblehoof.com.
Trying to choose the right supplements for the right horses often feels like a chore, and you have enough chores as it is. Fortunately, there's Equithrive, whose mission is to make this whole nutrition equation easier on you and much more beneficial to your horses. Equithrive's lineup of pelleted supplements are developed with care, backed by science, and a 100% satisfaction guarantee. Not to mention picky eater approved. Whether you need advanced joint care for your equine athlete, gut, or metabolic support, Equithrive is your one-stop shop for feed tub fortification. Do your horses and yourself a favor and visit equithrive.com. Use the promo code HumbleHoof and get 20% off your first order, plus free and fast shipping nationwide. Don't forget to use HumbleHoof, all one word, to get 20% off your first order at equithrive.com.
A special thank you to our wonderful sponsor, Cavallo. For our Humble Hoof listeners, they are offering 20% off their Cavallo Trek hoof boots using the coupon code HRN at checkout. The Trek is the world's most popular and versatile hoof boot and Cavallo's toughest trail boot, while also doubling as an option for therapy or rehab. The front closure system makes it easily adaptable to various hoof shapes, and TPU upper design allows for maximum strength while minimizing weight for the comfort and ease of movement for your horse. These are recommended by vets and trainers and also loved as transport boots by barrel racers, show jumpers, dressage riders, and everyone in between. Again, for 20% off a pair of Treks, use the code HRN at checkout at cavallo-inc.com. All right, so because I had so many people asking us about our track system, I did that post of the gelding track where the boys were trotting and cantering up towards the water. And a lot of people were asking me to do another podcast episode about how we set up our tracks. I thought I would talk to my husband, you, about it. So for those who maybe aren't Facebook friends with me, you might not know my husband, Vova. But he is the reason that I can get anything done on the farm because he does so much hard work around here. So I don't know if you want to say hi.
Hello, everyone.
And we've been married 12 years and he was not a horse person before we got married. And I actually was
am I a horse person now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And I had actually been taking a break from horses. So once we started, once we got married and I bought a horse, he was thrown right into it. It was a whole adventure.
I had no choice.
And obviously, for those who know the story of Vinny, it was Vinny. So he had navicular issues and lameness issues and sent me on this wild goose chase around the world trying to figure out his problems. And Vova tagged along to every hoof place we went.
Didn't take me to Hawaii, though. Not yet.
Thank goodness. So let's talk a little bit about our tracks. So we bought a farm January of 2023, and we have 21 acres in Amesbury, Massachusetts, and we have 2 track systems currently. And actually, they're not as big as you would think. So our tracks are each about 3 acres, and we do have some room to expand them. And right now we have a gelding track and a mare track. We used to have mixed herds. We always had a gelding only track and a mixed herd track because we had a gelding here that would get a little study around mares. And so we decided to have a gelding only track for that reason and a mixed herd. And then it just happened where we ended up, getting the geldings on the mixed herd went home last fall, and then we got more mares, and then it just worked out that now we have separate herds. But what are some basics of our track systems? We have loafing areas in each track that have shelter. Obviously, our water is separate from our shelter and our hay. And in terms of the width of the track, I know that's one of the biggest questions I get. I get that question all the time. Whenever I post about our tracks, everybody asks me how wide it is. So our narrowest parts are 12 feet. And our widest parts, and this is just the lanes, this is not the corners, not talking about loafing areas, not talking about corners. Our widest area on the mare track is actually like 30 feet. I think the boys track is probably close to that too. And if I could go back and do it again, I would make both tracks wider. Because although, what I was thinking when we're doing it is if we have it narrower, it increases movement and it also keeps down on grass growth because they're trampling it all the time. But I find that the horses are so much more comfortable moving in the wider areas because if there's a horse that's, kind of blocking the way, they won't go past them in a narrow area. I see more arguments like pinned ears, threatening to like get in a little argument in the narrow spots. Whereas the wider areas, everyone seems happier, but it is harder to keep grass down in the wider areas. So is there anything else that you have any thoughts on in the width of the track? I know that you're...
Well, at first we did the width of the track as the tractor, but we definitely should have gone wider.
Yeah, just thinking of getting the tractor through was the main goal. So we wanted to be able to get the tractor through all the way around. Yeah,
but the biggest thing on our tracks, which I love the most, are the hay feeders.
Yeah.
That's the big thing.
Yeah, so obviously getting the tractor through is important because we wanted to make sure that everything was wide enough that we could, if we had to do work on the track, if we wanted to add surfacing, the tractor can make through. When we were mucking, we wanted to make it wide enough to get through. But we feed out like 700, or I guess probably 600-pound square bales. And last December, was it December or January?
November.
No, it was definitely December or January.
All right, because we got the Hay Boss feeder at the fair.
Yeah, so we got a Hay Boss feeder from Mountain Lane Farm. So a little shout out to them in New Hampshire if anybody's in this area. And that has been the biggest
game changer. Yeah.
Yeah. So that we use our tractor, we pick up the 600-pound bale, and we put it in the Hay Boss feeder that already has a slow feed net on it. And we can put out hay, depending on how many horses are on the track. The hay lasts for 5 to 7 days. And I know
so much time.
Oh, yeah. And I know one of the biggest concerns that I have whenever I tell people that we use those is that horses will be moving less. Do you think that they move less?
I think they move more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. When we used to do
easy access to the hay, so they, feel more comfortable.
Well, not only that, but like we used to put small nets out all over the track. And I felt that they would always go to obviously the closest nets first. And when those were out, I had issues where sometimes they would just stand there and be like, okay, bring us more hay here in this close spot. So now we have the Hay Boss feeders at the farthest point of the track. So whenever they want to do anything, like if we feed them twice a day, they're minerals. So they have to walk the whole length of the track for that. To get water, they have to walk the whole length of the track. To go to the shelter, they have to walk the whole length of the track. But I mean, how many times, there was one day that you watched them. How many times did you count them going back and forth?
At least 10 to 13 times.
And that was just during daylight hour.
Yeah.
And so that was, 10 to 13 times, and it's like, what, like half a mile? So that's already, 6 miles that they're walking. Do you think that's right?
No, I think it's more of it's a quarter mile.
Oh, right, because it's only one length of the track. It's not the whole loop. Yeah, but still, that during daylight hours, if that was 3 miles, but still, 6 miles a day is way better than what you get in a paddock.
100%. I do it one time and I'm tired.
I know. That's the biggest thing is that because we have all hills, we do typically see really good increase in top line. And they're kind of keeping themselves fit. So that one of the biggest things that I've heard from some horses that have gone home that went back into ridden work was that the horses seemed more fit than when they were sound and in work before they came. Like they could take them out to do a trail ride and they were fitter than other horses they were trail riding with.
Well, I'm not a horse person, but whenever a horse arrives and they're chubby and they leave, they're, my terms, muscular.
I mean, yeah, we definitely have horses that are much more, they're not overweight for sure. I think that's one of the hardest things is managing making sure that we have tested hay that's good in protein and adjusting what we're feeding them daily to make sure that they're actually gaining muscle and keeping fit. What else did we say? What else do people often ask us about? I think that, obviously the hay feeders are one of my favorite things. What else have we really enjoyed?
People ask a lot about manure removal.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So here we have, like I said, the 6 acres of tracks, and we muck typically once a day. So we muck both tracks once a day, and then we compost our manure.
Mm-hmm.
And our goal, once we have a working manure spreader again, because the one that we use is currently out of commission, is to spread that composted manure back onto the fields, because we do some rotational grazing for the horses that aren't metabolic, just through typically May to like October, like the growing months. But we only typically have 8 to 10 horses here at a time, just so we can really ensure that we're giving individual care. And that's why I think we're able to just muck once a day. I know some of the bigger track systems muck twice a day, but manure is one of the hardest things.
If not the hardest thing.
Yeah. In fact, for a very short time, we were using a wheelbarrow and pitchfork, and that's stupid.
That's why I lost 20 pounds.
We ended up getting a Kawasaki mule with, we actually attach a dump trailer to it. We don't even use the bed. We just attach a dump trailer, and then we muck with that because it's very hilly. Although maybe I should start using a wheelbarrow again to get the benefits of the track like the horses do. But I think another thing we're talking about.
Well, real quick though, in terms of manure removal, I think the best thing that we've done is spread a lot of stone dust, so it makes it easier to muck on the track, because if it's on dirt or on grass, it's really difficult to remove it. So definitely the stone dust helped a lot.
Yeah. And I guess surfacing is another thing that people ask about a lot. So we originally started thinking that we were going to have our 2 tracks, one be a grass track that for some reason we thought would stay grass, and one a surfaced track. And we thought one would be like for retirement horses and one would be for rehab horses. And last winter, the grass track got all churned up and, basically went to mud, which was awful, we'll say. And then now is all dirt, and we're working on surfacing that too. But in an ideal world, we would scrape and surface with larger stone and then add like stone dust or sand on top. And when we bought the property, the previous owner had an area that he used for a gallop track, which was very well done. It has a beautiful French drain. And then he has, it must go down like a foot or two, where he has larger rock, smaller rock, various layers, and then sand on top. And we use that as one whole lane of our track. And that was just a huge blessing that was even there, because we didn't have to do anything. And then he had another side of that same track. That's why the rehab track that we started with, which was an access road to the manure, the area that he composted manure, and that was all gravel. And so that was really nice to have 50% of the track that was already instantly surfaced, that we just had to fence in.
And it's different surfacing too, which is nice.
Yeah. And we've done some of our own surfacing. Like last year, when we had a metabolic horse first move in, we had a really hard time getting rid of the grass. We tried, oh my gosh.
Vinegar?
We tried spraying with vinegar.
Burn it.
We tried to burn it, which, by the way, for those who were not aware, because I was not aware, burning grass actually can make it healthier because it introduces nitrogen into the soil. And so then it comes back greener and better than ever. So don't just try to burn the grass off your tracks. We were trying, I was trying so hard not to do like salt because I didn't want to ruin the soil. But the vinegar did nothing. It turned it yellow for a week, and then it rained and it was all green again. So, and we tried to scrape it. That helped a little bit. We scraped one whole loafing area and then ended up putting stone dust down. And that actually has stayed pretty well.
We got, remember one of your clients,
well, that's what I was going to get to, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so you can tell what happened.
Yeah, we got a rototiller attachment for the tractor. That helped a lot. It tore everything up. And then that's when we were able to spread the turned up soil and then compact it and then put stone dust on it.
Yeah, so I think the best thing that we did for anybody who's trying to get rid of grass in your tracks, we've done it all. And last year we had so much rain that it just kept growing. So the best thing we did was rototill. So we attached a rototiller to the tractor and we churned up all the grass, and then we ended up scraping some of it we ended up compacting, and then putting surfacing over it, and that was great. We definitely did not professionally do the surfacing. Like, nope. I wish that we had enough money to like hire out to do that, because we had so many downpours last year that we lost a lot of surfacing. We're on a hill, like we said, so we had a lot of erosion. Oh, we should talk about the erosion issues. Mm-hmm. So because we're on a hill, I thought it would be so fantastic because we wouldn't have, flooding and puddles of water. We don't have flooding and puddles of water. That's so great. But we had really bad erosion, like deep, like foot deep ditches when we had downpours that were just straight trenches down our track, down through even like our rock, gravel, like down through layers. To be fair, some of the downpours last year destroyed roads, like professional roads. So I don't think that anything we did would have saved it. But something I learned from Kiralee Niswander in Kentucky, she has Redemption Farm Rehab and Retirement Facility, and she is so great. I toured her facility in 2020, and she's so awesome. She's such a good friend. And she told me about water bars, which, if you Google water bars, it'll come up with a million different instructions for how to do it. Basically, you're just trying to divert the water that's rushing downhill so it doesn't just gain momentum and keep sweeping away all of the ground. So you dig a trench. I'm going to explain it so poorly. But basically what we've done this year, and knock on wood, we haven't really had a lot of rain this year to test it. I don't want to have downpours like we did last year. But we dug a trench. We put in a post, and actually we drilled in rebar, didn't you?
Yeah.
So that, that'll stay in the ground. And ideally what that's going to do is, because the post is at an angle across the track, as the water's rushing down, the water is then diverted off the track. And we have those water bars periodically down the steep areas to hopefully keep some of our footing, but also divert the water and ideally help with some mud too in some areas. So we're working on now backfilling a lot of that with gravel. So in between the water bars, we're adding gravel. And I don't know if we're going to end up putting stone dust in the hills. What do you think? Because it might wash away.
Yeah, I think it's going to wash away.
But mucking on gravel can be tough because you end up mucking rock and throwing away your precious surfacing. It stinks. I will say my favorite gravel is the pea stone, like the 3/8 inch round stone.
The most expensive one.
I know. And that is easy to muck because it just falls right through the pitchfork. But that also is very easy to wash away because it's so little. But the horses love it. Their frogs look amazing when you have areas of pea gravel on the tracks. We have one whole section on the boys' track right now that we're going to have to end up topping up. I'm sure it's going to go away this winter. But that reminds me, mud management. One thing that was really amazing last year when we had all the unexpected mud, because it was just raining it literally rained for like 10 months straight, and we didn't have more than a day where it wasn't wet out, was getting the Han, I think it is, mud grids.
Oh yeah. Mud grids are lifesaver. Just like the hay boss feeder for the food, for the hay. The mud grids are huge.
Yeah. Vova.
Who gave that?
Jen Foxwell in New Hampshire. And I think it's at a dairy, New Hampshire. She has Grid as new. Mud control grids. Awesome. Yeah. And so we always talk about this. Vova and I always talk about this, that our two most favorite things on the track are that hay moss feeder and the mud grids, because they have made our lives so much easier.
So much easier.
And when you're trying to do 800 things and trying to maintain a property, but also hopefully improve a property, and everything feels like it's like falling apart and you're not doing anything right, when you have something that saves you time and just is so easy.
And it's quality too. So
yeah.
It lasts.
And we're not, this isn't even supposed to be an ad. We're just like, we're just talking about it. But the mud grids, they are expensive. I'll say that's the downside. But because they're movable, it's worth it to me. Like if you rent a property or if you board, you can lay it down on a muddy area. They interlock. They're pretty lightweight in the grand scheme of what you can put down for mud. And when they interlock well, like if you do kind of like a brick, is that what's called? Like a brick layout where it kind of staggers.
Yeah.
They lock pretty well. And
you drive a tractor over it.
Yeah, it's awesome. And then, you know, you can always, if you're going to leave a property, pick them all up and take them to your next property. And
you can power wash them. You can knock the mud.
Really and the horses learn to use them very quickly. I was worried about the gelding track. We had one whole path that was, oh my gosh, this is embarrassing to admit, but they had mud above their fetlocks on one whole area down like this section right here that goes towards the feeder. And so we ended up just dropping, God, it was like a whole pallet worth of mud grids. I think, oh, maybe not. I don't know how many, it was 80 mud grids. And so when we put those down, the boys figured it out within a few days. Like they figured out, oh, this area is solid to walk on. And then all last one, I mean, it must have been 6 months straight where you'd watch them walk down the track. They would start straight down the track. And then once it got to that muddy part, they would veer to the right where the mud grids were. It's just 2 grids wide and walk all the way down the mud grids and then veer back once they were past the muddy part. They knew exactly how to use them. And then we also have a whole section of mud grids all around the mare feeder on the mare track. And that's great because obviously feeder areas with a feeder are a high traffic area that get muddy. But yeah, so those are some of the logistics of
Well, one thing you forgot to mention is the fencing we put around in the woods for what's that called? Shade.
I don't know what you're talking about.
The girl track, when we added, Cam helped us, and Pete to extend it so that you have natural.
Oh, extending the track.
Extending the track.
You said you made it sound like you used fencing for shade.
No, sorry.
Okay, yeah.
It's late.
I know. We tried to record this yesterday, just for everybody listening, and I forgot to press the correct button.
15 minutes in.
And we lost 15 minutes of conversation. So it's fine. We're just trying to remember everything we talked about yesterday. Yeah, so the boys track, when we made it, it already had, how big do you think the wooded area is in the boys track? Like a half acre?
Sure, yeah.
So we had like a half an acre of a wooded area that the boys love. And they also have another small loafing area that's in the woods too. So they always have access to shade, 365 days a year. The mare track, when we built it, it was the middle of winter. We weren't really thinking how to properly like set it up in terms of summer. And so it had the big shelter, but it didn't have any other shade. And so this past summer, we ended up extending the track into the woods a little bit. And we actually we have 4 acres of woods behind that track that we could use. And we just haven't had the time to go through it and see how we would extend the track into that area. But since we added the wooded area to the girls' track, they're in there all the time.
Oh, they love it. I think it's really cool because horse guard, what we use for fencing, is very flexible. So like you can just attach it to any tree and act as a post. So you can make a bunch of little tracks in the woods with that type of fencing.
Yeah. I mean, I think any tape fencing would work.
Yeah.
We got horse guard fencing because my vet recommended it, because I asked her what fencing is cost effective, but also would be safest in what she saw as like having the least amount of injuries. And she recommended that. And I will say we've had 1 or 2 horses that have gotten like tangled up in it or gone through it. And it literally, when I say tangled up, they didn't even get tangled up. They went through it because of, various situations. But I think everybody's had a situation where a horse sadly goes through a fence and it stretches to the point where they can actually get loose, which I prefer that. I don't want something that's rigid that they're going to get an injury. 0 injuries to legs. Oh gosh, knock on wood. The fencing is so easy to
It snaps back to its original form.
Well, it doesn't. I mean, you have to tighten it.
Yeah.
But it takes 5 seconds. I mean, not 5 seconds. It probably, when the 2 times that we've had to fix the fencing that way, we spent less than 10 minutes to pull the fencing taut again and just snap it back into place. Didn't have to replace a whole section. Didn't have to get more tape. It still functions great. Still works great. I've been super thankful for that fencing. And yeah, I think that's one thing that I have never once regretted, even though it's not a permanent fence. Like a lot of people say that, you can have wood fencing on your track. After seeing how the horse guard functions, I want to only use it.
It's awesome.
Yeah. And so I think that's some good logistics of our property and how we set up. In terms of horses here, do you want to, we can take like just a few minutes. I know that we're chatting about a lot of stuff, but about some of the cases here.
Yeah.
Did you have a
favorite?
Do you have one that's memorable?
Yeah, I really liked Everest. The big moose, I called them.
Yeah, so Everest came last summer. And actually, Vova was in Europe when Everest arrived. So he didn't even see him until he got home from Europe. And he was
big guy.
18 hands and every bit of 18 hands. And because when he first came, he was a little anxious. He seemed even bigger. But he was a navicular case, like 99% of the horses that come here. And he had soft tissue tears, injuries, and I think some collateral ligament, DDFT involvement. And one thing I remember from his owner, Sam Rollins, who's a wonderful dressage trainer, she was saying that it had actually been mentioned to her to possibly consider euthanasia because they had tried everything for him. They had tried corrective shoeing, glue-ons, rest, all kinds of things, and nothing had worked. He would always point a foot in front of him, one of his front feet, and he would alternate back and forth between which one he was pointing. And just really lame. He was unrideable. And before he came to our property, I asked if her previous farrier would be willing to pull his glue-ons. He had Sigafus glue-ons on, and send him here in cloud boots so that he would already have them on and be adjusted. And he arrived here, and honestly, he was pretty comfortable in the cloud boots. He seemed like he was almost instantly sound. So he was here 4 months. He had 1 week in that 4-month time frame where he came up off, and it freaked me out because it was like a month before he was supposed to go home, and I felt like he was doing amazing, and then all of a sudden he came up lame, and I was like, oh no, what happened? And that resolved within a week. And now so he went home last November, so it's been a year, and his owner trucks him here for trims. And she's back riding him, walk trot, starting to canter again. Awesome. And actually, he could have been cantering already, but she wanted to buy a pair of boots that fit him so that he had a little concussion relief while they're doing some canter work. But man, he's such a good boy.
Yeah, but currently though, my favorite, and I don't like to say favorites, Oakley. Oakley's awesome. Fist bump.
Yeah. Yeah, so Oakley is another. I don't know how we collected such big geldings.
Yeah, maybe I'm attracted to bigger horses. Is that the word attract? I don't know. Is the word attracted? Drawn. Oh, drawn. I'm drawn to bigger horses. That's what it is. I'm not attracted to horses. Oh, man. You can edit that one out. Jeez.
Yeah, so Oakley... and I have to think where we were. So Oakley was Oakley is a Dutch harness horse, and he's 17 hands, easy. He's beautiful. He's like big black with white snip on his nose and a star. I have to see a picture of him to make sure I'm saying that right. Lots of chrome, really pretty. He came off the trailer, and he was very crippled. His owner, Kelly, had reached out to me because he was a navicular case. He had just been diagnosed with a navicular before she reached out to me. But he had some hind end issues, which we found out ended up being a broken pelvis. And he had navicular issues as well as, which I consider the same thing, soft tissue damage and, the caudal hoof. So he had some, I'm trying to remember if his radiographs showed some calcification in his ligaments, his collateral ligaments. But he also had negative palmar angles and just the wonkiest feet. He still has pretty wonky feet. And honestly, when he came here, he was on Equiox and Butte and still lame. And we transitioned him off Equiox and Butte slowly, carefully, got him on, the tested hay here, minerals balanced to the hay test, some herbs, like Jaugulan, which is a vasodilator, and some other, like spirulina, some other things that just kind of help with his hoof growth and some other stuff he had going on. And he wore cloud boots, and he was significantly more comfortable. I mean, it probably took like 6 months. How do you remember when he started looking less like cringy whenever you watched him move?
Yeah, no, now he looks beautiful, but yeah, it's been maybe several months.
Yeah, it took a few months before you were like, oh, I don't, he was pretty weak behind. It wasn't even like a soreness. It was almost just like a mechanical. I mean, I have videos of it on my Instagram. If you look on Instagram, I've done so many posts on him because he's changed so much. But now he's been here a little over a year. So I think a year and 2 months, a year and 3 months. And his owner was back riding him, walk trot, and starting to canter again. And then he was diagnosed with Lyme disease. And after his treatment, he is now just getting back under saddle. But yeah, Vova was saying that he liked him because he does the fist bump. So do you want to tell what that is?
No, Kelly just showed me how to, reach out your fist and he'll just bump it. He'll lift up the whole leg and hoof and
he does it with his knee.
Yeah. It's on my Instagram, our Instagram, Harlov Farms.
Harlov Farm Instagram.
Sorry, Harlov Farm. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and so Kelly does a lot of trick training with him, which he loves. He loves trick training, and so he does a fist bump.
Can you do that with Vinny? Vinny's too old?
No, Vinny's not old. He's aloof.
Too stubborn.
He doesn't love people that much. You'd probably be much happier wild. Yeah, so what else? Is there any other thing that you feel like is important if somebody's going to open a track system or start a track system or build a track system? Anything you wish you knew before we bought our farm?
Anything I wish I knew. I don't know. It depends on how big the property is. I mean, if I knew how much grass I had to mow, well, that's not the track. Yeah. The thing is, I think in order to surface, I think I need to learn more about surfacing because you're right. We continue to drop a lot of money on the surfacing on the rocks and they just disappear. I don't know who steals them at night, but they just disappear. So we need to maybe,
do a better base.
Do a better base.
Or do something like that
professional
cloth.
Or
put some of that
YouTube.
cloth underneath. We need to do some of that. Well, you did get some of that landscape cloth.
Yep, we got landscape cloth. So we got to learn how to lay that down and layer the road.
I think honestly surfacing something that is just maintenance. Because we have a gravel driveway and that we have to top up all the time.
Yeah.
I think it's just a maintenance thing. And that gravel driveway was professionally installed.
Yeah, just anything to make it easier in the winter because winter's the worst.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I agree. I think if I could do it all over again, I would consider the width of the track, make it wider, like we said, and think about mud season more like winter, like you said, like have mud grids before we started or have surfacing before we started or just build the track and surface it before we put horses on it. That's just a convenience thing. Obviously, the horses were heavy.
Yes, I forgot to mention, have gates all over your track because it's tough to, if you're in the middle of the track and you want to get out, you have to go back to the start.
Yeah.
Different gates.
As many gates. We have 2 gates on each track, and we wish we had more all the time. Mm-hmm. And you know what's funny is my friend, Molly Murphy, who has track systems, who I used to trim for, she told me to have as many gates as you can. Yeah. And she warned me about it. She's like, you're going to always want more gates. And we didn't put in as many as we should. But
I wish we did, but we still can. That's why with horse guard, it's nice because you can just snip, put in the gate.
Mm-hmm. Easy.
Yeah.
Easy to extend, easy to add things, easy to, Yeah. I feel like those are some good points for people to consider.
2 years in.
I know.
What happens.
I'm sure we'll do another podcast episode in another year or 2 with more stuff that we've learned. It's always a learning experience.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you to my wonderful husband for taking a Tuesday night.
For this, right?
Yeah, right.
Nice big dinner.
Taking Tuesday night to talk to me for the podcast. I think that hopefully people get some tips and tricks from
Cool.
All right.
Sounds good.
Well, thank you.
All right.
I always say that I'm slightly more hoof obsessed than the average person, and chances are, if you're listening to a hoof care podcast, you are too. So we should probably be friends. Feel free to find me on Facebook or email me at thehumblehoof@gmail.com.